This week on Forward. It's like, look, you can't lose to Trump twice in 8 years and be like, business as usual, everything's fine. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, that's catastrophic failure twice, and the second time decisively. And you lose zero out of, you win 0 out of 7 swing states. I mean, that's a wrap. I think that the Democratic Party is going to fragment in a very serious way. Anyone looking at it would be like that. It cannot be business as usual. There are a lot of folks questioning what they should be doing politically, and I think we're going to get a lot of those people. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the post-election day venting recap debrief with me and Zach. We're recording this a couple days after Election Day, and I'd say that both Zach and I are pretty pissed off.
Yeah, it's not. Frustrated is my big word. It was a frustrating result for a whole bunch of reasons. How are you feeling?
Generally sad. People who know me know that I don't think Trump is a good person or a leader or a manager, and so I'm not excited about the administration coming in. But I am happy to retrace our steps a little bit. So we thought that Trump was going to win for months and months because it was obvious, where Joe Biden was a deeply unpopular, aging incumbent. Thought it was asinine that the Democratic Party wasn't primarying him. And along came our guy, Dean Phillips, who was making that very, very case. And we said, you know what? Let's do this. And I have to say now, everyone is saying, oh, man, if Joe Biden had only gotten out sooner.
Correct.
And now it's like, where the fuck were you in January when we were up in New Hampshire making this case? You were all probably penguin clapping, Joe, Joe's our guy. And
or
then now,
shitting on us, frankly. Not the people.
Oh, yeah, that's
podcast.
true. There wasn't even a lot of neutrality. Like, there was like the Democratic machine maligned Dean up the wazoo, which I think is deeply wrong. I'm still ticked off about that.
Yeah.
I mean, Dean literally banked his career on trying to do the right thing for the party and the country, and he got shivved for it.
Yep. Let's start with you, and I have a lot to say.
So I have an overall thesis too.
Please.
Where my thesis has been that life's getting worse and disintegration. The institutions are degrading and disintegrating.
Yep.
And trust is eroding. And so with that as the backdrop, I thought that Trump returning was always possible or likely.
Right.
Because if you don't believe the news media, you don't believe much of anything. And the Democratic Party kind of played into their hands, where a functional Democratic Party would have gone to Joe Biden in January,
2022,
let's say.
2023.
Oh, yeah. End of last year at the latest. Be like, all right, Joe, here are the numbers. They're terrible. You are going to lose.
And you're not as sharp, you know?
And
it was 2022.
And you're going to forget this conversation in about 45 minutes.
Correct. In 2022, he addressed House leadership in the fall of 2022. And he was losing his train of thought. His gait and his vibe was terrifying to folks that were in the room. And I spoke to Dean, and there's colleagues on the record on this. And Pelosi had to finish his sentences and finish the point for him. Was they're passing this infrastructure bill, this Build Back Better. Might have been the second. I don't know how many of those we did. And they were terrified that. And then he did not meet with House leadership since then. So we've known at least since 2022. It might even be 2021, but it was early. So keep going.
Yeah. So a functional party would have said, hey, Joe, this ain't it. We're going to primary you. You can feel free to run in said primary. And then Joe, I mean, that would have been humiliating.
Yeah, that's true.
To run in said
to watch
primary.
him get beat.
So then he would say, okay, I will graciously step down. Now, Joe didn't want to do this because he didn't want to be a lame duck. But this was arrogant, irresponsible, out of touch with reality, the whole nine. And the job of the party was to face reality. But instead, they propped up Joe and protected him and enabled him. And that extended even to when Dean Phillips, the only sane, courageous person in the room, said, yo, guys, this is not a good plan. They said, you are the bad person, Dean. And that was malpractice. It was negligent. So this to me is the original.
Sin.
We've given the country back to Trump, and it's 100% at our doorstep because Joe Biden screw up number one. And I endorsed Joe in 2020. I have no problem with Joe winning and being president, but he never was running as a 2-term president. Said he was going to be a bridge to the next generation. Like implicitly said, like Dean said, that members of Congress were stunned when he said he was running again. So, so number one, Joe Biden should have gotten the F out of the way. Number two, the party should have been like, yo, Joe, this is like insanity. So let's have a primary. And so the number two is Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, like all of the candidates in waiting that are trying to run, and that if they had challenged Joe, they could have forced the Democratic Party's hand, being like, wait a minute, what?
Mm-hmm.
Gavin Newsom is running. Like, well, we can't just not have a primary now when like the governor of California is running.
Yeah.
Like that would have been the right thing to do for the party, the right thing to do for the country. Then you have an energetic primary. The ratings would have been through the roof. You probably have Amy Klobuchar and maybe Pete run again. And then you have Wes Moore, maybe. You have Andy Bashir, maybe. You have this whole next generation of candidates who run, and then you fight it out. Kamala could have run.
Kamala would have run.
Kamala would have run for sure. And then you would crystallize a ticket. So in my mind's eye, that ticket is something like Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro. By the way, that's a logical ticket, given that those are 2 of the 3 states you really need to win.
You take those states most likely.
Yeah, you probably take those states with Gretchen Whitmer and Josh Shapiro. You pile into Wisconsin. And that's a winning ticket.
Yeah.
No, none of that happened, obviously. So number one, Joe Biden screwing up. Number two, the party saying, hey, let's not have a primary and attack Dean of all people. Number three, all of the future presidential leaders like not stepping up. It infuriates me when people just like miss their window, being like, oh, my window's later. It's like your window is never. You know what I mean? And one of the
window's
cases
not a real thing.
Yeah. It's like, you
didn't have a window, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't have a window. I mean, like, thank you, Yang Gang. We just kind of, carved one in a wall.
We didn't win, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So number two is, the party. Number three is all these candidates in waiting who now, like, I don't want to support any of the senior most folks in that bucket because they copped out.
Lack of spine.
When the country needed them. Yeah. Yep. It's like it was a lack of courage, a lack of character, lack of conviction. And then the press corps that obviously, was like enforcing the fiction. Yep. And then fast forward to June, by the way. So June, debates going on. You text me and be like, hey, this is terrible. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I tweet something saying they should swap Joe out. Hashtag swap Joe out. My phone then blows up and I get every major press outlet saying, hey, do you want to talk about this? And then I said, sure. So then, we had this multi-week arc of Pass the Torch Joe. That was freaking fun as heck in the sense of it was a righteous cause.
We felt vindicated. We felt right. We knew we were right, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everyone owed Dean Phillips a massive apology at that point.
Still do.
Yeah, and then Joe finally gets forced out, and then Kamala gets anointed. By the way, even then, you could have had a hurry-up primary. I understand why they were like, oh, we don't have time because Joe screwed us all by waiting so long because Joe waited till July.
You could have done it.
You could still have done a hurry-up primary. Instead, you anointed Kamala. And by the way, this weakens your entire democracy argument. Voters went 50-50 if they said democracy was their number one concern.
Yeah, they voted for Trump because democracy was a big concern.
Yeah, because they legitimately thought it's like, who's not really into democracy? The Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And is that 100% legitimate critique given you didn't have a primary and you anointed
lied about Joe.
A candidate with, you protected Joe and lied about his faculties and then you anointed a candidate? Yeah, it's a totally legitimate critique.
Fair critique.
You know what's another legitimate critique is that you're trying to marginalize and push out various candidates who,
yes.
And look, I mean, I came out with an op-ed and like, I'm a productive, constructive fellow. So it's like, I was like, look, don't vote third party. But, again, it's not exactly strengthening your pro-democracy.
No, it's not.
Angle. So then we wind up in this campaign with Kamala, having to make up a lot of ground because Joe's unpopular and like it's abbreviated campaign and the rest of it. And then, like, were there missteps in that campaign? Objectively, I believe so.
Yes.
But one of the most obvious ones is like, go on Joe Rogan. It's all upside. It's male, low propensity voters in the millions, and just seeding that audience to the Trump team, to me, was just utter madness.
Yes.
You have 3 hours with Trump, 3 hours with JD Vance, and then I think another 3 hours with Elon. At the end of that, Joe Rogan's like, yeah, I guess this is where we're going. If you had Kamala on there and Tim Walz on there, then it's more of an even Steven experience. And by the way, some of those people might have been like, you know what? Like, I'm actually fine with this human or this ticket, because it's not like Trump was, supremely lucid for his 3 hours.
No.
I mean, he was like kind of all over
Not
the
winning
place.
a ton of votes. I mean, some, but
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's the biggest platform in the world.
Yeah. It's like turning that down. Oh, by the way, saying it's like, oh, like I've got a schedule to keep in the States.
You
'Cause
got
it's
to
much
come.
more
No,
important.
the offer was you got to come to me, and we have to keep it to 45 minutes because I'm busy, which
Madness.
to me is insane.
Yeah.
That is insane. It's like saying you don't say that to Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
You
don't tell SNL to come to you.
Yeah. Jeez.
So it's so that. And by the way, like that's the kind of strategy you undertake if either one, you're up by a lot and you're like, hey, not worth the risk, which obviously it was not the case, or number two, you just don't have confidence in your candidate to be able to do certain things, which then brings us back to you should have had a primary, and and then you wind up with. So this is very upsetting. And one thing you said to me, Zach, which I feel, and we're gonna like get your thoughts on this. You're like, you're sick of being right.
Yeah. Sick of sitting here talking to you about, we called this and championed this and fought for this.
And fought for it. Like if you reflect on our time, I mean, again, thank you, Dean Phillips, but we're in New Hampshire making the case to real life voters being like, hey guys, primary would be a really good idea. We got 19% in New Hampshire.
Yep.
So it's not like we're pundits who are just like, oh, this would be a good idea. I mean, we packed up our bags, went to New Hampshire.
Lived in Manchester for a month and a half.
Yeah. You lived in New Hampshire.
Manchester's not my favorite.
Lived
I
in
love
New Hampshire. By the way, I love you, New Hampshire.
There's better cities than Manchester in New Hampshire, but anyway.
New Hampshire's lovely. I was glad to be back. I saw some familiar faces. Thank you, Yang Gang. Thank you. It was great. I mean, I was pumped up. It was real.
Yes.
That was 100% real. And the fact that everyone was like, oh, it's not like competitive or whatever. It's like 19% in New Hampshire is no joke, people.
Yeah.
By the way, if Nikki Haley had not taken all the independent votes who are going against Trump, because if you're an independent, you had to choose either the Republican primary or the Democratic primary to vote in. And, logically, you might choose the Republican primary.
Yeah.
It's like he probably gets 35%.
Oh, the numbers on Dean were crazy because not only that, most people, it was still like only half of voters, a little more than half, actually knew he was running because there was no formal primary. So to win 20% amongst half, like Dean had the fact that 20% of your party voting in that thing was like, no, not the incumbent president is already insane, especially, and then look at the numbers, like half of them didn't even know this was who the hell Dean was.
Yeah, and one of the things that also should infuriate us, and this is something if you reflect on it too, it's like, let's say instead of getting 19%, he got 29%. Like, would the press have covered it differently? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think so.
Because
that was our takeaway. It's like we could have got 40%. He would have had to 1. He would have had to get 51%.
Because the press freaking ignored it immediately thereafter. And it's like, man, what a fix that's in. By the way, anyone watching this objectively, it's a real turnoff. It's like I mean, like it doesn't make you think that this party is on the up and up, and that the media is playing it straight.
I'm very frustrated. I'll say a couple things. So I'm, you've been public about your endorsements. I haven't really. I'm not a Trump guy. I haven't been obviously working with Andrew for many years, but my big thing is, Trump has never been, to me, has never shown an intention of being a man of integrity. And I think it's a job of a man, and my definition of a strong masculinity is those who protect folks who can't protect themselves. And I don't think Trump has ever shown that almost ever. As I've never liked him. And there's a lot of other reasons in nitpick, et cetera, but that's not where I come from. But I have been prior to this race and Kamala's coronation, I was very critical of the Democratic Party, working for Dean, moving to New Hampshire, et cetera. But I've been personally on this podcast and on Twitter pretty silent about a lot of the flaws in the Kamala Harris experience, I'm going to call it.
Oh yeah, because when the campaign's on, you can't be like,
you line up.
You
line up, and I think that's important. I think Dems are actually normally kind of bad at this and been better in recent history of lining up. The adage was Dems fall in love, Republicans fall in line. It's easier to win elections.
By the way, I
What's
think
up?
It's a reverse now.
Yeah. I don't know what it is anymore, frankly, but it's usually easier to win if you fall in line, and I think that's fine. But now that this race is over,
the blame game's on.
Yeah, and
I deserve it, by the way, too. I've been putting online. It's like, look, you can't lose to Trump twice in 8 years and be like, business as usual, everything's fine. Yeah. I mean, like, that's catastrophic failure twice, and the second time decisively. And you lose zero out of, you win 0 out of 7 swing states. I mean, that's a wrap. I think that the Democratic Party is going to fragment in a very serious way. Anyone looking at it would be like that. It cannot be business as usual.
We saw Bernie post the other day.
You have this massive monetary advantage, and it gives you diddly in terms of it's like you have the media. By the way, I mean it's like there are a bunch of things. So big picture, like this people don't believe, and you needed a candidate who could go on a neutral platform. Like let's say, and I'm just going to say this, like a Joe Rogan, and actually move some hearts and minds. It's like, and I almost posted this, and like, it's like your ability to sit down for like a 2 to 3 hour interview with Joe Rogan should probably be a prerequisite if you're going to be a major party nominee.
It's a prerequisite for almost everything in this country. Like, how long is the interview process to get a job? I don't know about 2-3 hours straight, but you have plenty of people spending time with you to get to know you.
And Joe, by the way, Joe's like a lot less hostile than a Fox interviewer would be. I mean, Joe's actually inquisitive.
Joe was a liberal for a long time.
Yeah, he supported Bernie.
Yeah.
And he's part of like now.
By
the way, I mean, how many Americans have gone Bernie to Trump? Like
a lot.
Because Bernie had that anti-institutional edge
vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I had it too. Thank you again, everyone. And it's funny because I got asked the other night. It's like, hey, given that you're sort of this like entrepreneur, anti-institutional, like, why aren't you with Trump?
Yeah, a lot of people. I get in my comments a lot. It's like, why weren't you on the RFK train? Why are you? I've heard going so hard is what I heard. Going so hard for Kamala, which is not fundamentally true. But why?
By the way, I would have gone harder for Kamala if they'd actually asked me to do something. But I was on their shit list because I was so mean to Joe.
That's true. So why? But why endorse them?
I don't know if you know. I
knew that.
Like the campaign. A friend said, "Hey, you're on there. Like, don't use.
Do not touch." So why endorse her? If that's
I thought that either she or Donald Trump would be president. I do not think Trump has the right character or temperament or managerial interest. And so it's like, if you ask me, hey, business as usual, customary politician versus Trump, like I take the non-Trump option.
There would have been probably a spot for you in the administration if you endorsed Trump and went hard for him,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are all sorts of things. It's just for me, it's not about
you can move
angling.
You can actually move votes. I mean, it's not massive at the moment, but in a race where 100,000 votes or 50,000 votes or 10,000 votes matters, it was somewhat stupid to ignore. It's not just you. It's
there's like the general outlook too. It's you have to be additive. I mean, you should be fighting for anyone who's in that kind of independent, neutral zone.
Yes,
and so like I would have been a logical call, but they're just like, no, because you were mean to Biden, which by
Joe.
the way would actually give me it would actually be a better reason to call me because like I actually seem like I have a point of view that's
not a hack.
The rest of it, but it's like again, it's the kind of move you might make if you were 5 points ahead. You know what I mean? Hello, YouTube. Please do hit that like and subscribe button. And don't forget, you can ask questions at mailbag@andrewyang.com. See you on the interwebs.
I will no longer be silent. I'd like to say what needs to be said. And I think the biggest thing, I'm very frustrated with the outcome of this election and the entire process. And less about, ooh, boo-hoo, Trump won. I'm just frustrated how we got here. And the reason I'm frustrated is because this was so avoidable. This was so avoidable. And
What someone said was it's predictable and preventable.
Yes, for a number of reasons. One, Trump is very beatable. And don't let these results skew that fact.
Yeah, he's unpopular.
He is deeply unpopular with women. There's a large percentage of people that voted for him that do not like him. The double haters. Did you see that stat? Yeah, where they don't like Joe, but they dislike.
No,
Trump,
in this case, they dislike both candidates. They dislike both Donald Trump and Kamala.
Or more. Yeah.
They chose Trump something like 67-22.
Yep, he is old. He's 78, getting older. And by the way, if you don't agree with this, all the evidence you had and need was in 2020, where the Democrats nominated objectively a plain vanilla, moderate, I'm going to use the word competent politician, and you can take that with a grain of salt, but relatively competent, and he ran the table. Like, Trump is very beatable, and there's a reason Nikki Haley and DeSantis hung around in that primary for as long as they did, because they weren't sure that Trump could actually pull it off if the Dems nominated, if Biden's coherent, right?
Or if the Democrats had their act together.
And put forward a real case.
A reasonable ticket.
Yep. So he's very beatable. The second thing is that the Dems, and you made this point earlier, the Dems have a pretty solid bench. And I'm not talking about the usual suspects from 2020. I'm talking about Andy Beshear, Josh Shapiro. I'd throw Wes Moore in there.
Yes.
Folks would throw Whitmer in there.
Yes.
So folks would throw Buttigieg and even Newsom in there. I don't know if they have as good of a shot to win, but
they're talented.
There is at least 3, if not more, candidates from the Democratic Party that would have, frankly, wiped the floor with Trump. I think would have won.
Or at least, so what I said was Joe Biden is an historic loss. Kamala Harris is a dignified loss. Your best people is a chance to win.
Yes.
And so there's no guarantee that like a Whitmer Shapiro ticket would have won, but it would have given you a better chance.
You would have done better.
Yeah. Especially if, by the way, they had the energy and legitimacy of having won a primary.
Yes.
Because you know what? That stuff actually matters. You get people who are into it.
For sure.
Their opponents.
Their lists
then
transfer
them.
over. There's energy. There's endorsements, et cetera, et cetera. The third thing is that in this process, the Dems lost whatever they had left of the moral high ground. And this is what drives me probably the most nuts, where they told us that Biden was sharp as a tack. They were covering that up for at least a year, probably longer. They refused to have a primary. And I don't mean like he's the incumbent. We don't, that's what we're proactively kicking Dean and other candidates, Marianne, off ballots by state. I mean,
they canceled primaries.
North Carolina, they're getting calls from the White House saying, don't put them on, even though the requirement is just that you had to have media coverage to be a candidate. You don't, and then you shiv Dean and others for running and saying you're against the country or a fascist because you're going to help Trump win. You're going to weaken Biden.
Dean could have chilled in Congress for decades,
forever,
but instead he's out.
Yep. And then
thank you again, Dean.
Thank you, Dean. We then crown. I'm using that word intentionally. A deeply unpopular vice president. Deeply unpopular. Who? Last time that candidate ran for national office at the presidential level was embarrassed. Did not get to voting. We literally have a track record of what this looks like at scale, and it's not good. So we crowned this person, and you combine that with general distrust in media and the media backing a lot of these decisions. You combine that with, I'm going to call it, these Trump court cases, then some of them are the civil cases, I think, have more legs, but some of the one, like the one in New York, is objectively a version of nonsense. It's a thing that they're vilifying him. It's very clearly politically motivated at worst. At best, it's awful. And
it's an aggressive application.
Yes. So you combine all this, so the Dems, whatever, out here saying, democracy is on the line, while subverting democracy, is There goes your moral high ground. There you go. Trump, and in politics, when a strength becomes a weakness, it's catastrophic to you. So if the Democrats' message in 2020 was restore the soul of America, Joe, like back to basics, we're the party to restore sanity, and then you do all the things that are insane and saying all the things, you're doing the things that you're accusing Trump of doing, you lose your moral high ground.
Joe Biden failed the George Washington test. He failed the character test.
Yes.
And we all are saddled with a return of Trump as a result. And everyone should be very, very ticked off at the folks who protected him and pretended everything was going to be all right.
Correct.
And Dean Phillips, not to make too much of this, but Dean Phillips sacrificed his career to try and start that conversation. People still wouldn't have it.
Nope.
It was insanity.
And then to top it off, number 4, we didn't have a message or a great messenger, but the message here was, you had a candidate that this was driving me nuts. Like they were, from a comms perspective, if you're in politics, you work in communications, you work in comms, criminal malpractice offenses here. We did not have answers for the easiest of layups. Like, hey, what is your biggest weakness? What have you learned over the past 4 years? What will you do differently than Joe Biden? And and then in addition, we didn't have answers to what's your plan on the border? What's your plan on the economy? These were, you can watch Kamala's CNN town hall and you don't get answers to any of these. And it is brutal. Combine that with, what was the closing argument in this campaign?
Not Trump.
Trump's a fascist. I'm not exaggerating. Closing message, Kamala Harris said, my closing message, that's her title of speech, Trump is a fascist. Combine that with not going on Rogan, not embracing a lot of these podcasts, some of these bigger audiences. Malpractice.
It's like Trump is a fascist, and I will be conceding to him within 72 hours.
And then,
like that. That's like the.
Who are you trying to convince with that? By the way, like who? Even if it's true, do you think they're going to believe the Democratic Party in saying that? Right? Like who's listening to that? It's like, oh, you know what? Kamala says he's a fascist. Probably right. Like that to me is an insane sort of comm strategy. And lastly,
well, to defend that a little bit, it was former Trump officials who said it.
There were plenty of people that have said this about him. I'm not saying it's not.
They decided to
lean in, right?
Yeah, to make that the message,
right.
But.
And then to top it off, like at the end of the day, the Dems got stumped. We got absolutely smoked. Like we did not gain any county over Joe Biden. We did not outperform Joe Biden in any county by more than a couple percentage points.
You say we like you're a Dem, bro.
We being the party I'm talking about right now. You're right. The Democrats did not outperform. Like not one.
This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. What can you do that's going to make you happier, healthier, more energetic throughout the day? There's not much, but you know what really, really could make that kind of difference? Investing in a proper mattress. That's what I did with a Helix Sleep mattress. I took their personalized sleep quiz. I got a Dawn Firm mattress sent to my door. And not only has it made a difference in my health and energy, but it's also become my kids' favorite mattress, even though it wasn't ordered with them in mind. Maybe it's because they love me so much. No, it's actually because the mattress is better. And if you don't take my word for it, GQ, Wired, everyone agrees that Helix Sleep is the mattress pick if you want a better night's sleep. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. That's helixsleep.com/yang. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
So this isn't one of those things like, oh man, we ran a good race, and that is a message right now. We ran a good race.
It was a weak, corrupt bureaucracy failing the American people. If you think the job was to keep Trump out of office, and by the way, I think that was the job. It's
the only job.
Yeah, it's why I endorse. It's like I'm happy to be a team player and help try and keep Trump out of office, even though. Like I'm not even on the team, or like, you guys don't it's like I'm an American. I have my own point of view. I will say that again, I have family and friends who voted for Donald Trump, and I do not have a problem with Trump voters. I just happen to think that he's not a good guy or the person that you want to put on the top of everything.
For sure.
And so that does lead us to like what we see happening next.
And I'll just add quickly as we go to this, like I'm so frustrated because this is not a Monday morning quarterbacking situation. This isn't a couch pundit situation. Like,
this is we went and fought it out.
I did the work. Like, I got in the
yeah.
game. We got in the game both in 2020 and this year with like this cycle with Dean. And we tried. And what happened? Y'all shat on us and him. And I'm not, I'm preaching
the people
choir
here did not.
Right.
I mean, yeah,
but folks did.
Thank you for the love.
And now, look.
Thank you for sending Dean $20.
Now, look. Right? Now where we are. We say Trump's a threat to democracy, but not enough a threat to actually be thoughtful and critical about how we approach and solve this.
Oh, no. I mean, again, this is the corrupt bureaucracy, is that you have a bunch of professionals whose job in some ways is not to win. Their job is to be employed.
Stay relevant. That's a big critique of the consulting class.
And so if you go against your boss, the president, you are lessening your own employment prospects. So let me not do that, even though, our odds of winning are just getting thrown out the window. But it's like, we win or lose, I'll have a job, and it just like the total lack. By the way, so the fact that my phone was the one blowing up when Joe had that catastrophic debate.
Yeah.
And then I was on TV every day being like, yeah, Joe's got to pass the torch. And I was like, why am I the one that they're calling? It's because you could barely find a Democrat who would go to a microphone and say that. And then you're just like, what is going on with you guys? It's like there are a million of you. Like there's just like this groupthink going on. There's like a real lack of independence and judgment and courage and character. And you know what it is instead? Conformity and careerism. And it failed the American people on a colossal scale. So I think the Democratic Party is going to have a really hard time looking people in the eye and saying like, hey, like we did an effective job with your resources. Like, we have a genuine connection to the American people. Like what it is like we have a professional layer that we think with our money and our ads and the media, we can project messages and it's going to be enough to win. And what you mess with us, Dean Phillips? Like then we're going to bully you and use like these things
you want to work for Dean Phillips? You can get no business with the DNC.
Yeah. Someone did a favor for Dean and then they blacklist him. I mean, it's freaking garbage. And so you've got this little machine, but that's shrinking all the time and saying like, hey, this is going to be enough. And then when it's not enough, you're like, oh. It's like, oh no. I mean, it does remind me of like a corporation that has just lost its way. And we've seen this before with any number of corporations. Yeah. And then does the corporation have what it takes to like actually restore its original values and like have like a human at the helm who will do things that are like short-term harmful to the organization's interest, but better in the long term. It's like, so I wrote a critique of the Democratic Party for Politico, and I concluded being like, they will do none of these things. You can read it. It's like there's a punch list of things that's like you would do, starting with like you should apologize for sandbagging Bernie Sanders in 2016. Yeah. It's like everyone saw that, and it's like, there's and they will do none of these things. Anyone and the Democratic Party right now is like, hey, okay, we lost to Trump for the second time in 8 years. We'll get him next time. Who's up next?
Yeah,
it just becomes like this revolving door of personalities while our communities fall into the mud, and that's why they took this loss. So I do not think it's going to be business as usual for the Democrats. I think there's going to be a real reckoning, and it's like. I'm happy to tell the Democratic Party, here's what you should do. But like we all know that they will not do any of those things. Instead, what they will do is they will jockey for their place on the totem pole, even as like the ground shrinks beneath their feet.
And you said it best earlier. I'm so tired of being right. And I know there's people listening to this. They're tired too. They're tired of being right. And what I mean by being right is like knowing that this is the wrong path, knowing that this is foolish, while the country suffers. You know what I mean? Like the results of this of trying to keep the country strong and whole. It's not, you watch these decisions be made, we fight for them, we spend time and money, energy, uproot our lives to help, and then you're either not listened to, you're ignored, you're dismissed, etc. And then the country suffers because these poor, stupid decisions are made. And I will say this, Jon Stewart had an awesome rant on election night about there will be all these takes, and we're not really making them on like why Kamala lost and who didn't show up and what were the fatal errors. Like we had a couple here, sure, like Rogan, etc. But the reason to be frustrated was not like what happened on election day and election night. The reason to be frustrated is because this was totally 1,000,000% avoidable.
And predictable.
Because, we fucking predicted it.
Yeah. It's like if we could see it coming, why could they
Yeah.
not?
And it's so, it's infuriating. And like, so that like, who's this loss on? Who do we blame? Democrats. You blew this. You freaking blew this. Right? It was in your lap. You had it and you blew it. And it's all the things you fight for, whether it's women's rights, etc. Like those things that we say are so important and existential. Apparently not existential enough to get smart about how we make them happen. Instead, we just fall in line, do stupid things. And it's at the feet of leadership. It's at the Bidens. It's at Pelosi. It's at Hakeem Jeffries. It's at the DNC leadership. It's at every, to your point, every future Democratic leader, these governors that said nothing like that. Like it was a lack of courage, a lack of intelligence in some cases, a lack of honesty and integrity. And I'm frustrated.
Hey all, if you know me, you know I'm not that handy in the kitchen, and I have become a huge believer and booster of Factor. Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals make eating a joy. It's so fast, you just pop that thing 2 minutes later, and you are eating a restaurant-quality, healthy meal, making you feel excellent about yourself. My favorite is the turkey chili with zucchini, and there is so much more to choose from. You never get tired of it. It fits any budget. It's fast, healthy. It is going to be the new Factor in your life. Yes, I'm a fan. Head to factormeals.com/yang50 and use code yang50 to get 50% off your first box and 2 free wellness shots per box while subscription is active. That's code yang50 at factormeals.com/yang50 to get 50% off your first box. Get Factor today. It's going to change the way you eat. Well, again, it's one reason why Dean deserves his flowers here, is that what happens in these rooms. And someone in D.C. told me this. Well, there were a couple of things. So if you remember my campaign, someone said, D.C. is not a town of leaders, it's a town of followers.
Yep.
Truer words were never spoken.
Yep.
But the other thing is that everyone looked around and be like, oh, it's not my responsibility to, save the Dems from, losing to Trump.
For sure.
And then you look around and be like, whose job is it actually? Which of you has that responsibility? Now, in theory, all of them do, but in reality, all of them were like, not me. I just work here. I'm just like a person. And by the way, that culture is apparently endemic to DC. Everyone's like, oh, I'm just like this and that. Like, who would I be? It has been really fun. Again, thank you for sticking with us from the bottom of my heart, because it's been fun just being a guy and someone said to me, it's like only in politics can stating the obvious be considered courageous.
Revolutionary.
But every once in a while I'm like, hey guys, like he old, and then people are like, huh,
How dare
like what like a profound observation. Like, let's get you on TV to talk about that. And then I just point and be like, he old.
Yes.
And there are all these other people being like, wow, like so perceptive, so independent. I mean, like it's just like a bananas environment that we've descended into.
Yes.
But I will say so let's talk about what happens.
Where do we go
now
from here? Yeah. What's next?
Yeah.
We got our bitch fest out. And I feel good about it.
So one thing is like, look, the illusions are dying before our eyes. Everyone's like, my phone's been blowing up, like being like, okay, I'm done. What can I do? Time for something new. Like, status quo is not a reasonable response. Donald Trump will be president. He'll have his team. Like I dearly hope that he does better than I have feared. As president. I
Yeah,
personally,
I'm hopeful and optimistic that Donald Trump can unite the country and do a good job. That's what I want.
that's what I want. I will say, I'm dubious because it's not like his ambitions are a secret. I mean, he said it's like, hey, I'm gonna get revenge on this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do the rest of the thing. And then you give him the job. He's like, yeah, I was just kidding with all of that retribution and
Trump's tough to track because it's
I mean, he almost never has then opted to be magnanimous. That's not his MO. Like his MO has been like, what's that? You mess with me, I'm gonna mess with you. I'm gonna bully you. I'm gonna do
it's
the
like
rest of it.
the legend of there's a legend in the Republican Party talking about how Trump deals with foreign policy. It's like, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but he's, the story is he says to Putin, I'm gonna bomb the shit out of Ukraine, and Putin's like, no, you won't, and Trump says, but I might. And that's like his sort of MO. And the reality is, if you're Putin, he's like, well, he might, right? And so, and at times that makes him great at negotiating, right? It's a negotiating tactic, right? And it makes him, I don't have any particular problems with a lot of Trump's foreign policy. But that's what you get with Trump and everything, right? Domestic, I'm going to deport them all. It's like, no, you won't. You can't do that. But I might, like, okay, maybe, right? Like, and some of that's really dark and terrifying.
One Trump story that stuck with me, just random. It's small in the scheme of things, but years and years ago, he ate at a Chinatown restaurant banquet with 20 of his friends, and then this is before any of the political stuff.
Yeah,
and then he just didn't pay the bill. He just walked out and was like, "Hey, you should just count yourself lucky that we came
graced
here."
you.
I graced you, and I walked out. Like, and that to me, it's like, man, like that's not the dude.
New Yorkers don't like Trump for a lot of reasons, and a lot of it's shit like that.
Yeah. It's just like
the stuff with Atlantic City where he had like small contractors spend a lot of money because they think they're working on the Trump casino, and then he just stiffs them with the bill and makes them sue him, et cetera. Like a lot of things like that. I don't like it. That's the lack of integrity thing I'm mentioning.
Yeah. Part of it too is, and if you think of the roles and functions people have, and this is something that I grapple with in a very significant way. But I came up as an operator. I ran a company.
Yeah.
If you have someone who's all sales and no follow through, then what happens is they go around spreading messages and doing things, and then there are people behind them being like, "What happened? What happened?" And there was a Tim Alberta story about the Trump campaign where, like all the staffers were totally burnt out, because they were, the fact that that you and I are still having this conversation together means that it's like working with me is not like something that like makes you lose your hair after X months. I mean, maybe a little bit. I know I've like done some things, but but you know what I mean. Like generally speaking, I'm someone who expects there to be like long-term relationships, and the rest of it. Like Trump's like, make a deal, and then it's like, and then like what happens after? It's like, it doesn't matter. I'm on to the next deal. It's like, I can spin various things. So I just dispositionally dislike that, and like I am deeply concerned, hoping for the best.
Yeah, look, I hope he's a great president.
Hoping for the best. Like one thing I put out there is like, look, if this crew, and this is one of the most interesting things about this time in American politics. One reasons why the Democrats lost was that a lot of people who are working class just did not believe the Democrats actually were going to do anything for them. And the Republican Party has become the party of the working class and the folks who don't have college degrees. And so one of the major questions right now is, will this crew actually make life better for working class Americans? And if they do, if they succeed, then you could see a long-term realignment where the Democratic Party, by the way, it's already happened. I mean, union endorses Kamala Harris, and then union leaders are like, F that, I'm voting for Trump.
Right.
And so then you have like this fissure between the institution and the individual. But if they can actually fulfill their promise to working class Americans, then you could see like a long-term shift in the way these people vote. And I will say, I would be all for anything that makes life better for working class Americans.
For
I
sure.
don't care who does it. If this crew passes an enhanced child tax credit, which by the way, JD Vance said he's into, like I'll be the first to be applauding.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I could give a shit who does something that alleviates unnecessary poverty and deprivation. And so, like, am I cautiously hopeful that maybe we'll see some of that out of this crew? Yeah, I am. This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. How did you choose which internet service provider to use? The sad thing is, most of us didn't have much of a choice because ISPs operate a lot like monopolies in the regions that they serve. They then use this monopoly position to take advantage of customers, and yes, they even sell your data, your activities to advertisers and big tech companies, and you don't see a dime. That's why I protect my internet surfing and devices with ExpressVPN. When you use ExpressVPN, it's like a magic portal to a perfectly safe and anonymous internet. And don't take my word for it. This is the #1 VPN service according to CNET. It's used by major companies all over the world. So stop handing over your personal data to ISPs and other tech companies who then mine your activity and sell off your information. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep my privacy online. Visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's EXPRESS VPN.com/yang to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/yang right now to learn more.
Yeah, I like the Dems have not shown us any track record that they can get things done like this. So who knows?
Yeah, no, it's true. They might have more license to do things like the revived enhanced child tax credit because you know it's their people, and they'll be like, "Hey guys, we're doing it." Whereas if the Dems and this is something I don't like about that crew is that like if the Dems propose it, they're not for it, and then if they propose it, then they're for it.
Yeah. So where do you think we go from here, man? What should we be expecting? Where's your head at?
Oh, I should say that election night was a terrible night for the democracy reform movement. By the way, like all the ballot initiatives that I was super excited about, most all of them did not pass. You know, you had DC pass. Interestingly, you had some local wins, but the big statewide ones. I mean, I want to say that this is a very, very difficult result for for someone like me who's like anyone but Trump. For the democracy reform movement, very, very rough. And so looking up at it, like we have to figure out what our big opportunities are. And I will say, like, there are some opportunities I'm excited about. One opportunity for us in the short term is that there are a lot of folks questioning what they should be doing politically. And I think we're going to get a lot of those people. I mean, so who's joined forward? Independents, yes. Folks who've been out on the duopoly, yes. Moderate Republicans who are not into Trump, yes. And now it's Democrats who don't think the Democratic Party is going to get it done, which I don't know which you all consider me. I mean, I'm a former Democrat who doesn't think the Democratic Party or the duopoly is going to get things done. But so there's some energy for us. We even next week we'll be talking about something really big that could help with the public sector. But I will say, in the short term, it's absorb, vent, grieve, learn, do some things. I mean, people have been texting and calling me, and like I have said to folks that this is this is a tough time. My general thesis has been that America is going to be going through like a very, very tough time, and I think that we're going to be beginning that kind of period.
Yeah.
I also think, by the way, no matter who won the White House this time, the economy cannot stay, fired up and buoyant forever. I mean, I always thought in the next 4 years that you'd have the shoe drop at some point. You know, I mean, there was
maybe.
like a somewhat shaky labor report that came out just last week. Some of the infrastructure investments that this is ironic, the Biden administration put in place are going to be coming out during the Trump term, and so Trump will get a lot of credit for that stuff.
Because they're always funny.
The way our politics works.
We have like Republican congressmen like getting excited about rural Wi-Fi that they voted against. You know?
Yeah.
Those
No,
tweets.
it's like, oh, let me cut a ribbon on that.
Congratulations. We
You
did
know,
it. Like, you voted against this.
So I mean, I will say this is someone. I was talking to someone to say like, hey, it's going to be rough water ahead. So what you do when there's rough water ahead is you just try and build a better boat, and that can mean a lot of things to different people. But that's what I think we should be doing.
One of the fun things I always find after an election is to ask, where do you think the parties go from here? The Republicans, somewhat obvious. They get Trump for 4 years, and then Vance potentially, unless you have a Mike Pence situation, which is not out of the question, but potentially the future of the party. But so let's start with the Dems. It's probably more interesting. Where do you think the Dems go from here? You think so Bernie Sanders basically put out a statement, an email, saying, "Screw this, Democrats suck." Where do you? I think I don't. My gut says the Dems won't actually learn from this unless there's a leader. There has to be a strong.
Yeah, they're going to be leaderless.
You need
because
a strong
Joe Biden's about to go
force.
off into his dotage.
Yep. I don't know if we learn from this. That's probably my.
Yeah, I think the Democratic Party is going to be adrift until a leader emerges, and they're not going to be that excited until there's an election on.
Yeah.
So 26, depending on what happens, there will be attempts to retake the House.
Yeah.
I mean,
it depends what Trump does in the first 2 years, and if it's something that pisses off enough Dems, maybe they rally together on a policy or message.
But this is always one of the things, man. It's like, like people cannot stay energized forever. Where there's a lot of exhaustion.
Yeah.
If like someone compared, it's like when Trump won in 2016. You had like the Women's March, you had all this stuff. There's like a convulsion, a reaction. Now, you know what there is? Resignation.
Yes.
Now it's like, oh, we're going through this again. Like, this sucks.
Yes.
And the country deserved better. Yeah, it's reality. It's disheartening.
Let's end with something hopeful.
Sure.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for policies that help the masses.
Same. And I am interested in some of the big ticket anti-bureaucracy things, like like that. I mean, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious what RFK does with
food additives. I mean, that's a real issue. It's like,
yeah.
if you can clean up our food,
Not sure he can do it,
supply.
but be interested. He's one of the few people actually talking about it, so that's exciting. I like less wars, which seemingly is a platform of Trump's for whoever.
Yeah, when
it's worth.
motivated by the right thing, I like less wars. I mean, I don't like just capitulation.
Yeah, I don't like letting people run roughshod. There's part of it.
Yeah.
We need to stay. And there's studies on you need to keep your armies fresh. So take that with it. So and I'm optimistic because we'll be in the front row. Still fighting.
I'm in like the build mode. So this is what I'd say to folks out there. We have ourselves, our health, our families, our friends, our jobs, like our economic prospects. Some of you follow me, I think, because, you sense that I'm someone who likes to try and build things, whether it's a party, a movement, campaign, a company. It's like there's nothing impeding us from building in our own lives, and that's what I mean by rough waters, build a better boat. I'm disheartened by American politics. I'm disheartened by this result. I do think some of the biggest macro problems need government to try and address at scale. But what we have to do is we have to address and improve things in our own lives first. and by the way, that's true regardless of what's going on in our politics. I mean, because our politics aren't going to solve those problems for us necessarily.
Yep.
So I think this is like a, hey, let's build our own stuff. Let's get things done. Let's solve problems. And we'll have other chances at making things happen at the highest levels. I'm sure. I mean, what's funny is like, you don't anticipate things sometimes. It's like when Dean was running, we're like, oh shoot, like
Yep.
really?
That sounds like a lever we can pull.
Yeah, like that's something we can help with. So there'll be opportunities, but let's build stuff in the interim and also enjoy our families, our friends, our own lives. I mean, it's like, it doesn't do anyone any good if we stew and become unduly negative. You have to have perspective and act positively and be there for your friends and yourself.
Sir, keep building. I love it. Good talk, man. Love you guys.
We'll be back in 4 years. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll be back.
I mean, I'll be back next week. I
That's
think
true.
Zach's gonna
I
get
probably
the
won't be
week.
back next week.
Zach's gonna get the week off.
Later, y'all.